I don't remember that. It's had a couple different names.
Good morning. I'm going to wait till you all sit down, then I'm going to ask you to stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Sheriff Koontz, can you lead us, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'm going to open up with an announcement this morning. Supervisor Mike Calaveras became ill last week. Unfortunately, he suffered an infection that required hospitalization. He is recovering and getting better and should be released within the next few days. He will be back to work soon as he is medically cleared. Wishing Mike a speedy recovery from all of us, and he thanks us for your support and our support as well. All right, so we're going to start off this morning with a couple of really great recognitions and acknowledgments. And Supervisor Kearney gets the honor of his debut proclamation. And so, Supervisor Kearney. Oh, they'll hear you. Yeah.
He's been giving me a hard time because I asked him to let me wait until the very first proclamation I brought up was this one. So I've been shirking my duties with everybody, and I did that on purpose. They've been real patient with me. So from now on, I'll help share the honors of presenting these, but I'm really proud to present this first one. One of the responsibilities I took on, and I take it very, very seriously, is dealing with our aging population. The third of our counties is in that. I've been working to try to understand the needs and also bring new things that maybe were lacking here. And I'm really proud to present this one today.
Stand up here, right up here, Steve. Steve, stand over here.
Hi, this is Phil, and your last name Sherwood. Okay, I know it was Phil. Phil Sherwood is your chair of the Commission on Aging, and I had the real pleasure last Friday of sitting in one of their meetings, and they are a wealth of information, and it was a great time, and Supervisor Edson shared that moment with us also. And I'm really excited to give this one. As I said, it's my first one, and I did that on purpose, and couldn't be happier to present this to you, Phil. This is a proclamation recognizing June 15, 2015 as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Whereas World Elder Abuse Awareness Day was launched on June 15, 2006 by the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse and the World Health Organization at the United Nations. And whereas each year an estimated 5 million, or 1 in 10 older Americans are abused, neglected, or exploited, elder Americans lose an estimated $2.6 billion or more annually due to elder financial abuse and exploitation. And whereas no one is immune to abuse, neglect, and exploitation as it occurs in every demographic, and whereas it is estimated that about 1 in 5 of those crimes against elders are ever discovered or reported. Excuse me. And whereas, according to the latest census 28.3% of the county's population is age 60 and older, and the Health and Human Services Agency Adult Protective Services has an average of 58 active ATS cases. Whereas the purpose of the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is to provide an opportunity for communities around the world to promote a better understanding of the abuse and neglect of older persons by raising awareness of the cultural, social, economic, and demographic process by affecting elder abuse and neglect. And whereas the Commission on Aging and Common Ground Senior Services is hosting an event at the San Andreas Town Hall on June 15, 2015, with guest speaker Patrick Arbor from the Institute on Aging in an effort to raise awareness about elder abuse. Now therefore, be it proclaimed, the Board of Supervisors, Calaveras County, hereby recognizes June 15, 2015 as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And I congratulate you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. The pleasure's mine. It really is.
So we have to
We have to vote on it.
have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Before I say the last word, we have public comments. Should we do it? No.
Oh, I have one public comment, if I may.
I guess you count since you're up here.
Yeah. The event is free. It's at the town hall here in town. It's at 11 o'clock, and we're inviting you. Please call Common Ground to make a reservation so that we can have you there. And the speaker is a very good speaker. I've heard him twice before, and I think you'll enjoy it. So please come.
So we have vote 5-0, 4-0. That's right, and one absent. So
The last part of the proclamation is passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors, County of Calaveras, State of California, this 9th day of June 2015. Thanks again, Phil. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we have another proclamation, and this proclamation is to, we're going to adopt a proclamation, or we're going to vote on adopting a proclamation to honoring 2 senior volunteers of the year. And please step forward. And
You got double duty today.
good duty. This is a good way to start off a budget day.
Yeah, something very light. I failed to mention one thing that's really important about the previous item. On World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, there are only 74 communities in the United States that are making this happen. We're one of 74 across the board. Okay, I'd like to start first by introducing members of the Commission on Aging. We have several of them here. Would the commissioners please stand? Okay, we've got George Fry here, Rex Wisdom, Laura Sunholm, Doris Toth, Bertha Underhill, and who else? And myself. So we got almost a quarter. Oh, yeah. Okay. For over 30 years, the Commission on Aging in this county has recognized senior volunteers. And this year, we are lucky to have a number of nominees, very good nominees. And we've selected 2 people, 1 man, 1 woman, for recognition. But I first want to start with those who were nominated. And if you're here, would you come on forward? And also the person who has, or persons who have nominated you, you can come also. So the first nominee is Lori Andrade, nominated by Jimmy Harrington. Come on forward. The next nominee is Sharon and Bill Booz, nominated by Roberta Jacobs and Marty Frank.
Bose.
Bose, nice. Next are Barbara and Jim Kavanaugh, nominated by Zeral, Nathaniel, and Martin. Next is Jenny Kapta, nominated by Kathleen Bennett, Susan King, and Patricia Pratt. Next one is Captain Betty Miner, who was nominated by volunteer deputies. Our last nominee is Leo Quintana, nominated by Janine for Jenny Hayward. To explain the process of selection, the commission reviewed the nominations of all who were nominated. A vote was taken, and the selection was made. I think you're all worthy. I had a hard time voting, I can tell you that. I mean, there were a couple of cases we flipped the coin because they were so equally qualified. And on behalf of the commission, we want to thank you for your service to seniors in this county. So, the selected seniors for 2015, Lori Andrade and Leo Quintana. Would you like to say anything?
I'd just like to say thank you. I've lived in this community now for 15 years, and was the best move we have ever made, my husband and I. We've made wonderful friends, and by volunteering, we've been able to make even more friends. I started the Arnold Angels, and that's why I probably got this award, but it's not me. It's the Arnold Angels. It's people like Jaden Katz and Jenny Harrison and everybody, all the 175 ladies that are the Arnold Angels. So actually, I accept this award on behalf of them, and I am totally honored.
Yes, I'm currently right now, I volunteer at the food bank, and I've met a lot of wonderful people. I never realized how much they needed us as volunteers to help in the community. And I have been fulfilled. I've met a lot of good people coming through there, and hopefully we can continue the good work for the community.
Both will be receiving proclamations. They weren't prepared today, so.
They're here.
Oh, we got it. Oh, you got it. Oh, absolutely. Why not?
So I'll let Supervisor Kearney go first. It's good number.
First off, what an honor to stand up with you all. You're all winners. And I'm glad I didn't have to make this decision on who, because it hasn't been tough. I know I've gotten to know some people very well, and I'm just not getting to know others. And to say they're the backbone of our community is an understatement. And I do everything I can to mix the next generations in with this group so that they can benefit from their wisdom, and I don't make any secret of that. I think that's really important. I'm honored to be able to read this. It's proclaimed Senior Volunteer of the Year of 2015. Whereas, for the 42nd year, Calaveras County Commission on Aging is selecting its Senior Volunteers of the Year. And whereas each year, the Calaveras County Commission on Aging seeks from the citizens of Calaveras County nominations for the Senior Volunteers of the Year. And whereas it is Calaveras County Commission on Aging's mission to select a woman Senior Volunteer of the Year and a man Senior Volunteer of the Year for Calaveras County for 2015. And whereas the Calaveras County Commission on Aging has selected 2 Senior Volunteers of the Year for 2015. Now therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors, Calaveras County, hereby declares on June 9, 2015, that Leo Quintana is the Man Senior Volunteer of the Year, Calaveras County 2015.
Pictures. Yeah, I gotta get a picture first. I just love it. I have an advantage right up here. You know, it's great.
HD square around that way.
All right. Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.
So,
I got one more.
I'd like to make a little statement too. I've worked with a lot of these folks, and even when I didn't work with them, I went on to events, and these are faces that you always see volunteering everywhere you go. Even the people that nominated the person. I work a lot with Jim and Barbara, and with Parks and Recreation here in San Andreas. They are responsible for, with their team, responsible for maintenance on Turner Park and the baseball parks up here, and it is no easy task. I was on that board for a while, and it's a lot of work for free, volunteer. So I certainly appreciate all of the volunteers up here. Without volunteers in our county, it wouldn't be the same. That's for darn sure. So I appreciate that. And I'll move on to, and I am giving this. Reading this proclamation for Supervisor Calaveras, since he can't be here today, so it's my honor to do that. Proclaiming Senior Volunteers of the Year for 2015. Whereas for the 42nd year, Calaveras County Commission on Aging is selecting its Senior Volunteers of the Year. And whereas each year, the Calaveras County Commission on Aging seeks from the citizens of Calaveras County nominations from the Senior Volunteers of the Year. And whereas it is Calaveras County Commission on Aging's mission to select Women Senior Volunteer of the Year and a Man Senior Volunteer of the Year for Calaveras County for 2015. And whereas Calaveras County Commission on Aging has selected 2 Senior Volunteers of the Year for 2015. Now therefore it be proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County hereby declares on June 9, 2015 that Lori Andrade is the Woman Senior Volunteer of the Year for Calaveras County 2015. Passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of County of Calaveras, State of California on this day of June 2015. I'd like to call for a vote, please, on these two.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a nomination by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Pondy. All in favor?
Comment? Public
Opposed?
comment? Robert?
That's, so can we have public comments on this, please?
I'd like to just say one thing. We didn't get it together quite, but you will be receiving certificates from Congressman McClintock also. We have his representative here, and we're so happy that we'll be able to do that. I'm a member of the Commission on Aging, and I just love the position. And I'm just so happy that one of our own, Lori Andrade, part of the Arnold Angels, was honored, and Leo, excuse me, and I've seen you at the food bank, so congratulations. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. I appreciate also the work of the volunteers, and I want to echo your sentiments that it certainly wouldn't be the same without them. And my wife and I just finished visiting 6 or 8 national parks, and you'll see every once in a while a badge on the shoulder of people who are working in the park, usually the visitor center, and it says volunteer. And I always go up and thank them for their work, because I really appreciate the work of volunteers. And thank all of you.
I have Lori's proclamation.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say something. I myself, and I think everyone that's standing here, feel that they receive more back by giving. it's so good to be able to give. You receive so much in a way back that you can't even explain. So I want to thank you so much for honoring me and everyone else here for the hard work that we do. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Commission on Aging for the support that all of you have given me for chairing this year's nominating committee. And I'm reminded when I was 14 and a half and John F. Kennedy gave his inaugural speech, and it's a very famous line that he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country?" And that has stuck with me from that day on, and I've been a long life volunteer, and I thank you.
Okay, this is amazing. I mean, every year we all come together and we do this, and as a former recipient a few years ago, I echo over and over again what you said. But I also want to say, you may live up in that district, but you belong to the entire county. Everything you do up there impacts the rest of the county. Gary, what you said about everybody volunteering and helping, and that's what makes our parks work. Well, I would, and then somebody just said, what you give back. Well, I will go one step further and say that it is our, if we treasure the community that we enjoy, we have to step up. Every one of us. And also, when in nominating Jim and Barbie and Bill and Sharon, there's no way I could put it into 1 minute like what George asked me to. There's just no way. Which would be the case, I'm sure, with all of the nominees this morning. But every time you nominate one, there are probably 1,000 that are still under the radar. So there's lots to select from for next year. So get on it. Anyway, thank
He's on it? Well, I guess we'll give him a few minutes warming here. Aren't you warm? I got sweat going on. It's pretty unusual. They're talking. Requires a lot more energy to sit here and I run all that way. Yeah, we're working on it here.
The thing at camp, by the way.
Oh, good.
Thing I talked to my son about until
Huh?
You want break?
No, we're just going to give it a couple of seconds.
Michael.
What did I do with my glasses? Hello, Gary. How are you? Here comes.
They're still there. People try to burn them down, but it doesn't stop.
All right, let's continue, please, with our meeting. Sure, it's going to be a long day. So we're going to move on to public comment.
Debbie Beaufort.
Excuse me, I have to read the, you can stand there, though, it's all right. Any item of interest to the public that is written within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. Grab that there, Zachariah. Thank you. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda, unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the consent agenda. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued at the conclusion of the regular agenda in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard. So, with that, public comments, please.
Okay. I have a comment.
Would you hand them to Karen, please?
Peggy and I are from our new 501c3 Focus, and today we brought with us this little cutie pie. She's one of 41 kittens we have in there as of this morning. We have 41 kittens and 25 adults. So I'm not a good public speaker, so I'm going to read the rest of this. Early in 2014, some residents of Calaveras County decided that the best way to help Calaveras County Animal Services in its day-to-day business would be to found a nonprofit organization that would concentrate on just that. This was the beginning of Friends of Calaveras Animal Services, or FOCUS. Initially, FOCUS was welcomed by the Calaveras Community Fund to allow for tax deduction donations. But we are very, very, very proud to announce that as of last week, June 2nd, FOCUS is recognized by the California State Franchise Board and the IRS as a nonprofit on its own. So we've done that since May of last year. Apart from all the paperwork involved to become a recognized nonprofit organization, FOCUS raised over $40,000. This shows you the generosity of our community and also highlights the community sense of importance when it comes to the animal shelter. FOCUS also received a donation of 2 surplus modulars from the Vallecito Union School District. With the donations was able to relocate the buildings to San Andreas next to the old animal shelter. Actually, that is old animal shelter property. It's where the business office used to be. For the first time ever, Animal Services will be able to appropriately house cats and dogs in their separate houses. The increase in space will also now allow Animal Services to house kittens and puppies separately until their immune system is fully developed. I will not be able to list all the generous help here, but instead I would like to express our deepest gratitude to all the helpers we had in this endeavor. Thank you all. Actually, on the timeline, there are a bunch of names of people that have already donated time and lots of money. And this thank you also includes you, members of the Board of Supervisors, for supporting us. But we will not stop here. These 2 buildings not only give all the above-mentioned benefits to our furry companions by increasing the space by almost 50%, having these buildings here will also increase the workload for the Animal Services staff. They are in dire needs of an additional person to help in the shelter. Already the animal control officers have to cover the shelter or front office for 3 days a week. And we need to remind everybody, Animal Services has to be open 7 days a week because those little critters up there need to be fed and cleaned and everything. So an additional shelter person would not only pick up the increased workload, but also free up animal control so that they can do what they're supposed to do, which is be on the streets. We can do it with your support and with the support of the community and with the support of many volunteers. The Focus Board encourages the Board of Supervisors to support the administrative office's proposal to add a second kennel assistant to this year's budget to help staff the new cat facility provided by Focus at no cost to the county. So any of you guys that would want to, some of you have come and visited and seen the progress we've made, but anybody in the public that would like to come up to the shelter, Henning can get one of us and we'll give you the tour of the new facility. We're getting very, very close to opening. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Marty Crane, Valley Springs. If we haven't caught on yet, it's all about volunteers, and it's not just today. All the different pockets of volunteers in the county and across the different counties and the state, all at some point they end up intersecting and working together. I just returned back from an Air Force Base, McClellan Air Force Base, 4-day Red Cross Institute training for instructor training. And we had over 200 Red Cross volunteers there learning to become instructors to help others join in the efforts of Red Cross. When there is a house fire, a bomb threat, anything that disrupts life as we see it, that puts people in danger and our furry friends. But here in Calaveras County, that's not just dogs and cats, it's horses and goats and iguanas and anything else that we call a pet or our livestock. We all work together to make sure that an emergency does not turn into a disaster. So if you have an interest in being part of that aspect, which is a big umbrella, then please call the local Red Cross or your fire department, and they will put you in touch. It was an inspiring weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Any other public comment? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. 3 or 4 months ago, I appeared before the board and asked that you take some steps to increase the conservation of water usage. One of those I suggested was gray water diversion, and I mentioned that Sunset Magazine had an article at that time on a homeowner who retrofitted his gray water disposal system to utilize it in the garden area. Now, you already have an ordinance that allows gray water to be used in the garden area, it just can't be put on the surface. Since that time, 3 or 4 months ago, I have not seen the board take a positive step toward increasing, or I should say, helping the public in conservation of water usage. And I would encourage you once again, in the way of subsidies for those who might convert their gray water disposal system to the garden, or in some way on new homes, make gray water disposal outside mandatory, so that the usage is reduced considerably. Now, I know that when I talked with CCWD about this, the staff person, he said, of course, the less wastewater we process, we're going to cause, and also the same with water. If they sell less water, they're going to be out some money. I think that should not be a consideration, besides the fact that operation costs get reduced, if that's the case. Anyway, whatever this board can do to facilitate people conserving water in the manner that's already been suggested and approved in your ordinance code, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Any other public comments?
Good morning, Bill McManus from the Calaveras Project. A couple weeks ago when I was at the meeting, we were talking about adding on another layer of government via the housing coordinator. And Supervisor Ponte made a comment that kind of struck me, and that was that investing in low-cost housing has a tenfold return for the county, and I challenged her at the time. So I just wanted to let you know, this is old business, that I check my email twice a day, and up to this point, I have not received that data, so if it's coming, I'll continue to look for it. In new business, I know you're all anxious for a marijuana update. 2 cities in Southern California, Yucca Valley and City of Riverside, recently banned marijuana from their communities. Of course, here in Calaveras County, we languish way behind and seem unable to do anything about it. What was interesting is those 2 cities did it by a measure that was on the ballot, Measure A and Measure X, I believe. Both of those measures passed by 60%, and that was the people voting, people expressing their will. So if the board here is reluctant to take on this issue, as you have been in the past, maybe you can turn it over to the people of Calaveras County and put it on the ballot and let us vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any other?
Good morning. Al Scala, Taxpayer Association. I'd like to make a few remarks about the current issue going on, or was going on, with the new asphalt plant in Valley Springs. And also, our group has looked at this, and we have to say thank you to the planning director and also to Supervisor Kearney for taking a realistic and also a very responsible approach. Asphalt is not a pollutant, and it's not environmentally harmful. It sheds water. It's a wonderful, wonderful, probably the most wonderful substance we have in America. There's really millions of miles of roads are paved with asphalt. So much less expensive than using concrete or gravel with all its dust. If asphalt were a pollutant, why would the paved parking lots at the hospital be paved with it? I would say that just about everyone in this room has their car parked on asphalt. Asphalt sheds water. It doesn't mix with water to get into the aquifers or get into intakes at the water facilities. The charges that were thrown out in the public were false. If there was an individual that was attacked in such a manner, that would be liable. They'd have to prove their charges or face consequences of the damage they do by their words. By their words. So, in this case, we have some public officials that are doing duck and hide, and we have a media which is now probably beginning to realize that it was part of the problem of the scare to begin with and may correct itself. But above all, this needs to proceed, even though the applicant is not going to, what we think is not going to put their asphalt plant in place at this time. They have an offer apparently from Amador County telling them that they're welcome there. So it's kind of like a black eye on our economy. It's a black eye on the basic laws and principles of honesty and telling the truth. And so we think that we should proceed because of all this false information to the Planning Commission and have this reviewed. And so that in the future, if this company at that site would want to reinstall an asphalt plant, they could do so with no more complication if they expanded their concrete operations or their gravel operations. So we have an opportunity to proceed, to clear the air, to get the truth out, and by doing so, perhaps stop future things like this from happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Rage, Generalin, and I like to listen to issues that folks bring up, and I'm glad most of it was covered that are important to me. But I'd like to request the board to consider my favorite organization, CSAG. There's a couple of things about CSAG that is going to be found Sacramento. One, there is a concentrated effort concerning Prop 13, Prop 218, and I might be corrected, but 65 or 62, there's another one related to Prop 218. I'd like to hear openly, for the record, of the locally elected Board of Supervisors, their stand on Prop 218 and Prop 13, and put in the writing and let CSAG know. So, because we never, I know people go there, but I haven't once seen a written report. Who, what, where, why, how much, okay? There's a lot of litigation that my taxpayer, through you, support, and some of those things the public realize, which that organization support, wouldn't be very happy with you. So I'd like to see more report, and I would like to see your stand on Prop 13 and Prop 218 on the record. I was hoping that maybe you can, and she's going to love me for it, keep you updated what's going on in this state, appeals court, and et cetera, that's affecting us. You as taxpayers and legal consequences that are going on. There's an appeals court, affect basically CCWD, and the reason I bring that up, most people don't realize, a lot of people say, hey, CCWD, oh, thank God I'm not going to do with it. I don't care, I don't want nothing, no money. Well, folks, most people don't realize that every one of your constituents' property tax goes towards CCWD. And sometimes they have to be informed that their property tax helps to build a beautiful Taj Mahal over there, folks. Property tax helps build Taj Mahal. And also, you can only have so many captains of the ships. But my property tax that I give you folks for a certain policy, and you give my property tax to another state county-wide organization, and they conflict, I'm paying double for nothing. I'd like you to consider, take a good look at it. It's the Board of Supervisors that created CCWD, and it's about way past time to reconsider that organization as it is. That's a service organization. There's a big difference between what they're doing solid-based and water. And it's about time to re-examine it. What little minor details, difference between it. I know it, but I'd rather see you, some authority can inform me on it. It's property tax. And folks, you taking it out of my pocket, and that organization taking it out of my pocket, and you're conflicting, or you're both paying for it, for a certain ideology. Take a close look at it, because even though most people don't realize it, you're getting double tax, sometimes for nothing, sometimes for a good reason. But that property tax, there's a lot of other agencies, service agencies, that could use that portion of property tax to help them. So, thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Does it make sense, or is it too complicated?
Any other public comments? All right. So I'd like to move on then to the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. So do I have any requests from the public on an agenda, consent agenda item to be pulled?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, would you remove item 4 from the consent agenda for discussion, please? 4. Thank you.
Any other items?
6, 7, and 8.
Okay, any other items?
10, please.
All right. Is that it? Can I have a motion on the remainder, please?
So moved.
I have a motion by Supervisor Kearney,
I'll second.
second by Supervisor Ponte. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So passes 4 and 1 absent. All right. Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. Seems like I make a lot of repeat visits to you on the same item. I'm here once again to talk about the item of hiring what euphemistically is called the county trapper, and I have called the county assassin because he's a paid killer of wild animals. In the past, I have objected to spending public funds for killing animals in their own habitat. And as you may recall, the report that I referenced before showed that the trapper trapped 274 animals and killed every one of them. The Sacramento Bee, and I've got the issues here, had a number of articles on this subject and interviewed a number of wildlife service managers and also former managers of the wildlife services. And that the managers, some of the managers I should say, felt that the bloodletting is scientifically unsound, wastes tax dollars, and alters biodiversity. One former manager said, "It's a killing business and it ain't pretty." That's a quote. The indiscriminate trapping and killing of predators, along with more than 150 species of owls, porcupines, herons, and domestic dogs, is at odds with scientific data. There's nothing to back this up scientifically. Sometimes trapped animals, and it was in the articles more than once, are left, even though the trappers are told to check their traps every 7 days, they are left out there for sometimes weeks at a time, and in the snares and traps, the animal that was trapped dies. Horrible, painful death. And the other thing is that the trapped animal that's in that trap may not be the one that's causing the damage. There's absolutely no assurance that the animal that gets trapped is the one who caused whatever alleged damage there might have been. The Director of Wildlife Services in California, whose name is on this contract that's been proposed to you.
30 seconds.
What was that?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
There's a time limit? At any rate, the Director of Wildlife Services in California, his name is on the contract, and this is another quote: "We pride ourselves on our ability to go in, get the job done quietly without many people knowing about it." I term that as sneaky. Now, a solution to this is to do what Marin County is doing. They got out of this program with Wildlife Services. They've reduced the number of livestock being killed. In one case, the rancher said his losses have been reduced 60%, and not one wild animal was killed. And the other thing I want to mention to you, and this is important to you people.
Okay, are you going to be pretty quick at this because your time is up, actually?
Okay, let me just mention these things that are not part of the contract, which I think is important to you. The contract calls for the use of ammunition, chemicals, and pyrotechnics. This would imply that whatever job that the trapper is doing is dangerous or hazardous. And you need to make sure that, one, that the Wildlife Services Organization holds you harmless for injuries to this person, or provides you with enough liability insurance to cover you, because if they get hurt, they're going to sue you. And the last thing, I would recommend that you adopt the Marin County's method of taking care of these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell.
Folks, mark the calendar. I'm going to agree with this gentleman. Doesn't happen too often, but yes. Every year since I've been coming here, this issue keeps coming up. And I'm a city boy. I don't know the difference between a spotted owl and another owl. The Fed's shooting one brand of owl to save the other. Well, we all have a little God complex, but I don't like that. What I would like to see, if this look into it, you're talking about around $65,000, almost $66,000, and he's going to love me. There's a mouse over there who would, you can put this money into life traps. And I would love to see all the good folks who worry about livestock and so on. Maybe we can have some of them come out and maybe check the traps, put that poor animal back in the wilderness someplace from a distance. I'm sure there would be some volunteers, but right now, what I've been hearing is that basically these trappers will kill them, okay? And I would rather see that kind of money, maybe given consideration. Somebody is in charge and does a great job, animal shelter and so on, invest in some. It would be one-time investment. You can have different size traps. Give them an opportunity, and I'm sure there's a lot of people going to be stepping forward to save those animals. I'm not asking you to save any of the rattlesnakes around my house because I use my God complex. I killed it, some of them. Now I know the difference between the different snakes. But there's certain animals I would like to see saved because they're just innocent, bystander, stuck in a civilized society, and you should give them a chance to live their own life. It's including the whatever owls picking on spotted owls. Thank you.
Okay.
Members of the Board of Supervisors, George Fry. I think this is $66,000 that the board could save in terms of the 2015-2016 budget, with the hearings coming up at 11 o'clock today. I like what Gary's saying, and maybe this should be tabled until you have an opportunity to look into what Marin County is doing. So I would encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Kevin Wright, Ag Commissioner. First thing I'd like to say is that most of the agricultural industry is in support of a wildlife trap. The calls that we get are specific. They're specific for an animal that is depredating on livestock, sheep, goats, or is a human risk. So it's not a war on a species. It's taking care of a problem, a specific animal that is causing a problem to somebody in our industry or is a health risk. Also, the animals that are taken care of by the Wildlife Services people are actually counted. We know how many we take, not how many we take, how many they take, and they know about how much of a population there is out there. So it's scientifically based. And without that professionalism that they bring to our county, you don't have any idea about who's taking what. Now, somebody brought up that Marin County had this excellent program. Guess what, fellows? You have no idea how many animals are actually being shot in Marin County. The county's paying for fences and that sort of thing. I agree. And is that admirable? Probably is. It may keep out some animals from attacking certain sheep. However, there is no accountability for the animals that are actually being shot by individuals. And I can tell you from word of mouth, which is all I know, that is more than what is generally perceived by the public. Now, the person from Wildlife Services, the district supervisor, is here, and I would like to have him come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Good morning. Wade Carlson, District Supervisor for Central District, USDA Wildlife Services. Like Kevin stated, our program in Calaveras County is to help the residents in the county deal with wildlife damage problems. And part of the process that we have in helping residents deal with that is giving them assistance with recommendations, things that they can do themselves, things that they recommend all over the state, including in Marin County, if we want to use that as an example, to non-lethally harass, exclude, or stop wildlife from causing damage. That's part of this program. It's part of every program that we have throughout the state. Some of the facts that were referenced in certain articles in Sacramento Bee take a nationwide approach, and methods that are stated in there aren't even allowed or used in California. So I would hope that the board wouldn't take base statements and as fact that they are happening locally, and or that sentiments expressed in articles like that are felt by our program as a whole or by our cooperators that we help deal with damage that they're experiencing. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have regarding the program that's in Calaveras County, but it is a benefit to the residents and not only affects just livestock and agriculture protection, but property damage that people experience within suburban areas. It's human health and safety issues that happen. It's disease transmission. And there have been many things that people look into to try to mitigate wildlife damage. Unfortunately, live trapping and relocating depredators or nuisance wildlife that cause damage is not possible. It's against state law to do that. So that's not a viable option in moving a problem animal to somebody else's backyard, not to mention the possibility for disease transmission when you move an animal from one place to the other. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Could you explain what areas you cover? Because it's not just Calaveras County, right?
No, it's not.
For this particular contract?
For this particular contract, yeah. It's for Calaveras County.
It's just us?
Just you.
So the 65,720? It's just us?
Yeah, that's the contract amount to have
Okay.
one full-time wildlife specialist in your county to deal with all the wildlife
All right.
damage issues.
All right. Any questions from the board?
I just have a comment. I think my experience serving on the Fish and Game Commission, as well as working with Animal Services, have learned that the trapper, the perception is that they're killing wildlife. But through the work of those two particular commissions and with Animal Services, I find it's much more than that. I do find where, the trapper and other support personnel that he has had available to him, tries to educate the general public about why wildlife is coming into their backyard, and assisting people in trying to mitigate those kinds of things. I've also find where, when you have an animal that is rabied or has rabies, that, the potential health risk is great. Most people, don't know what to do with it. And you certainly, for the most part, don't want people taking those kinds of situations into their own hands. And that's where I find, the service has been invaluable to Animal Services. And where animals are dropped off or you're called out to a certain location has been most helpful. So I appreciate your comments about what this, contract monies do for having a wildlife trapper here. It's much more than about, quote, killing the animal. There's so much more that this trapper does for our residents of the county. So I appreciate your comments in that regards. And, I just think as more public education in that arena would be most helpful to try to mitigate the perception of what, the trapper, most people think the trapper does.
Correct. Yeah, we have an obligation to educate the public on what they can do themselves to, avoid having a damaged situation. And a lot of times when those methods are employed, that situation is resolved. When we get involved, it's because the public has tried those things and they're still having the damage. And so individual animals are removed to stop that from happening. There was an economic study that was done several years ago about our program, and on average, for every dollar that's spent on this program, in just about any county, over $9 of damage is mitigated, or the losses are saved. So a 1 to 9 ratio in economics. So it has an economic benefit to the public, and there's accountability. We do environmental documents that analyze the number of animals that are taken by county, by species, and compare them to data that is collected by the state, and compare it, with our take, the percentage. And those percentages are far less than 1% in every case. And so we're not targeting populations, we're not targeting areas, we're targeting individuals that are causing damage.
Are you deployed by the federal government?
Yes, sir.
Why would we not continue to get the education that you're providing if we don't fund this? It seems like you would still have a responsibility to come and whatever presentations you're making, tell people, to not draw mountain lions, take their food source around your house.
Yeah. We provide that to counties that don't have a program with us. There's not funding enough to do any direct control or removal of specific animals. But if someone calls me from a county that doesn't have a cooperative program with us, I take the time that they can do to mitigate their damage.
And I can appreciate that. How many counties in the state of California don't have a cooperative trapping program?
I believe those that do is somewhere around 36, 39, somewhere around there.
About 2/3 of the state
Has a program.
and a third does not.
Correct.
Thank you.
Chris? Okay. My issue with this is I feel it could be privatized. We have a biologist even here around here that does that sort of thing, and I've always felt that way from the first year. I think I've seen you here actually. My other issue is I know that I've got a lot of complaints about a lack of response from your service, and I quite a bit actually, and so I just like to know how you rectified that.
I have the ability in my district to use personnel where I need them to. For one reason or another, there will be a change made in this county if a contract continues with personnel that will be used here. I'm going to be utilizing the current employee on another project. So we have an existing employee that will be utilized here if a contract continues and funding is available. So we'll be utilizing another employee to do the work here in Calaveras County.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have none of it.
Okay.
I'd just like to add another comment just for clarification. Just getting down to the bare facts on the budget. The actual program is a $90,000 program. Taking all the costs, it's $90,000. The county's cost, as we said, was $66,000. Of that $66,000, 40% of that is supported by California Department of Food and Agriculture in the form of subvention funds returned to our county for the unclaimed gas tax of the following year. So the actual net cost to our county isn't the 66, but take 40% of that off, you wind up with about $41,000. So the contract cost is part of our budget, part of the Department of Agriculture budget. Since our Department of Agriculture budget is somewhat funded by CDFA, the cost of the veteran trapper is also reduced by that 40%. I just wanted to make that clear.
All right.
So we get a $90,000 program for $41,000.
Okay.
With professional people.
Thank you.
So Mr. Wright had a second chance at the microphone. Can I have a second chance?
Who did? He's the official for the agriculture.
He's the
So-
official for the taxpayers.
Yes. And
You know what?
I wanted to mention...
Please sit down, Gary.
What?
Please sit down.
Sit down?
Yeah, please sit down.
I don't get a second chance like Mr. Ray?
No, you got your chance just like everybody did.
This is my first chance.
Good.
My ears picked up when I heard the word, maybe this could be done privately, maybe without the taxpayers being involved. I like that. I think there should be more exploration about that concept. It would seem that if I had damage from wild animals, I should be able to hire somebody to help me. I assume that's what we're talking about. Maybe it's not as complicated as it first appears. Also, to be helpful for people that have problems with deer in their gardens, sometimes my gardens get wiped out in the past with deer. And I tried electric fence, I tried different things. One thing I found that worked pretty good was a material called Deer Stop. It's a spray. It's a red color plastic spray. It's made with peppermint oil and rosemary oil in an emulsion. You have to shake it. And you can spray it on anything, and even food that you are going to eat. And the deer won't touch it because they think it's rosemary, and they don't like rosemary. And just that alone can really reduce a lot of damage that that deer do to gardens. So anyway, I'm all for privatization, and now we know how to fight deer. Thank you.
Good morning, Brian Moss, Environmental Management. Real quickly, and Wade, please correct me if I'm incorrect. If the board should make a decision to discontinue the contract and want to pick up the contract at a future date, would we not be responsible for 100% of the costs? Okay, just speaking from the fiscal standpoint, I just wanted to bring that up to the board's attention. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the public that haven't already spoken? Sorry, Gary. How about from the board?
Marty Crane, Valley Springs. Debbie, thank you for bringing in the expertise and your understanding of the fishing game. Every single year, it seems like, we have this same conversation. And yes, Supervisor Edson, the idea of private enterprise taking care of this comes up, and I believe you're the one that brings it up. And I recall last time there was some talk about so would that person that you had in mind, would that person, if there was a bear incident, would he go after that? Would he go out and take care of that? And your answer was probably not. So there's a lot more to this conversation, and we have it every year. And I would suggest that we make a note of this date and time and the place on the recording and play it back to ourselves every year so we don't have to constantly keep rehashing the same information. We have our experts in the room, and when someone says, well, I'm a city boy and I don't know anything about wildlife, and then goes on, we probably need to take him for his word on that. So I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but I just wanted to say that we have this conversation every single year, and there is so much more to it, and those that have their shotgun ready to go are not the only ones that live in this county. And I don't know all the rules and regulations around wildlife either, which is why I rely on the experts in our county. So thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Any other comments from the public? All right, so yeah, we bring it up every year, and I got to tell you that I respectfully disagree with Marty's comment about me saying, will he go after a bear? No, he wouldn't. I know he would. So the biologist I'm talking about does that sort of thing. But I don't think that, in my opinion, we aren't ready for something like that because we haven't discussed it or even put out a program for it. And so that'd be the issue for me. If we terminate this contract today, we're kind of stuck in limbo until something gets picked up. So my wish is that we could maybe take a look. Maybe Kevin can take a look at the different options that we could have to be able to, just like anything that we do, we try to improve on our current programs. And I would be really interested in hearing some of those other options as well. So, but I can't. Go ahead.
I think that's a good idea. It's always good to look at different options. I mean, what are the other third of the counties doing? If they're not running this program, how is that working? I would suggest that we have staff work with the Fish and Game Commission that's set up, with people that I know you know and respect are on that commission. Work together. We could even invite Gary in as a, to talk about his views on the issue. And maybe we could, hash out some of the different alternatives through the Fish and Game Commission. So that would be my proposal, would be to move this for approval with the issue to go back to Fish and Game Commission for further discussion.
I'll second that.
I like that idea. And Gary, I mean, if you would, that would be a good idea if you could get involved in that. Yeah, okay. So I have a motion by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Ponte.
Okay, exactly what are we voting?
We're going to vote to we're voting to move this, approve this contract, and that the Fish and Game Commission would
Study this
study
issue.
the different options out there and do recommendations to us. In the
Okay,
future.
moved along a little quick before I could ask a couple questions.
Okay,
And,
go ahead.
if this contract isn't approved today, how long do we have coverage until?
Probably June 30th. It's effective.
Good question.
The coverage is for the fiscal year,
So till June 30th?
next year.
No,
If you don't approve it,
Our
Yeah.
current contract.
you have it until June 30th of this year. However, in the contract, there's a possibility that there is a clause that for a quarter, if you terminate the contract, that you would need to keep the person employed for 3 months, I believe. So it's not, so that the Fish and Wildlife Services has some forewarning that it's going to be, they're going to be losing an employee.
Would we carry the contract on for 3 months?
Yes.
And we could do our research and then okay the contract, if that was truly what it was?
I believe so. Wait.
You have to execute a letter of intent.
That's correct. There could be a letter of intent to terminate the contract. I believe it's either a 60 or a 90-day written statement on.
Okay, so I'm still asking, if we do not fund this by vote right now, and he's told me that when the contract expires, we still have an obligation for 3 months to maintain the program. Okay, if we're studying this in those 3 months and we don't find a better solution at the end of the 3 months, can we renew the contract?
Yeah, at any time.
Okay. Well, I don't know if anyone wants to reconsider their votes.
I like what we're doing here better because it's more, it gives us more time.
For
to
a
do
full
it.
year?
Yeah, I think we continue what we're doing because I think once we get more light shed onto this subject and more discussion with the Fish and Game Commission, you'll see that what we're doing here really is a pretty good thing. You know, even though it's not perfect, but we don't live in a perfect world. We have a lot of human habitation within wildlife areas, and so we're always going to have that interface problem.
Right.
And what the program, because I sit on the Fish and Game Commission, as Debbie does too, you know, before I sat on the commission, I was with Cliff a lot more on, you know, that, hey, let's look at alternatives here. But then once I get all the feedback from Fish and Game experts, then you kind of see how this program really does work. And so I think I'd like to just keep my motion going forward, have that discussion. Hopefully, if you'd like to attend those Fish and Game Commissions too, you should, to get that information. And, you know, everybody should, and move forward with it like that.
I would agree.
And we can always bring it back too, if we wish to.
Well, actually, we're funding the contract for a full year.
You know, I would like to just explore the options. I don't think it can be done in 3 months. Number one. Number two, you know, we've been going through quite a bit of this scenario here lately about jumping to conclusions on certain things without finding out facts. We have a Fish and Game Commission which we appoint people. I think that is the tool that and the resource that we need, that we could use to explore this. We haven't done it up until now, and we should have, actually.
Well, the commission has always supported this program, at least to my knowledge, for years.
So if we ask for to look at alternate programs, then that's something that they should do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree that we should have report backs on you know, that sort of activity.
Mm-hmm.
And what it could do is produce the fact that it's the best thing in town, right? Or it could come up with something else that could be better. But a lot of times what goes on here is conjecture and, information that is hearsay. I like the facts before I make a decision. So that's why I would support this
I'd be happy to bring any data to those meetings that you need to help make your decision.
Yeah, so we're going to ask them to do that, and I would be happy, or I would support this with the intent of investigating what the other possibilities are, and so that we can move forward with as much information as we can to make a good decision. So I have a motion by Supervisor Wright, right?
That's correct.
And a second by Supervisor Ponte. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so 1 no, 1 absent, and 3 yeses.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Brian.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a recommendation, and that would be to study it as proposed. I'm not sure how the administrative office feels about this. With study sessions, they used to be very successful in the past, but my recommendation would be to give this some time, get the Fish and Game Commission, Fish and Wildlife Commission now.
It's actually still the Fish and Game Commission.
I suppose Fish and Game.
We didn't change it.
Okay. Even though the state did.
I know.
I know. The department changed, the commission
The department did change.
did not.
Yes, but the bottom line is, I think it would be really great to come back to the board in a study session format where Wade can come back, Kevin can come back, Fish and Game Commission can come back and present findings, and then the board can make a more informed decision.
And I think that's perfectly appropriate. I just think we take the easy way out on this. And the one comment I do agree, we have this discussion every year, but we've never gone forward. I'm not looking so much of a justification of the current program. I want to know the alternatives.
I think that's a
have we
good point.
trained the ranchers other ways to discourage lions from their stock? And I just haven't seen that. I mean, it's really easy for us to accept the fact that we trap something and somebody comes up and at least he finally said it, that they just terminate the animal right there. Did we find ways to keep those animals? I realize sometimes that's probably necessary. Nobody wants a lion stalking a playground. But in all of this discussion, and I've heard these too through these years, we haven't brought up a single alternative that I'm aware of. And that's what needs to be done with this vote. It's not that I don't think that we need to protect our agriculture, and that's why I voted no. It's that I believe we need to look for alternatives to this.
Yes.
And I think that's a very good point. And again, I think a study session with the players involved to answer those questions and look at alternatives and look at the fiscal end of it as well. Answer all of those questions once and maybe not once and for all, but certainly will lessen the impact one way or the other when this subject may return to the board in the future.
No?
And I would just like to comment that this item has been on Fish and Game Commission for many, many, many years. Fish and Game members have fleshed it out. They've looked at the pros and cons, and this has been their continuous support of this program. So, I think it is appropriate and have the Fish and Game Commission look at it again, because every year there could be new things or new ways or whatever. So I think that's appropriate. But, just to know, Fish and Game Commission has looked at this for many, many years.
And I think it's important, though, that a lot of those discussions, there's not a lot of people involved in those discussions.
Right.
So we need to bring some of that discussion out, into the more general public, and so everybody kind of gets to hear the same information that they're getting.
Right.
So,
It would be nice if more general public people attended those commissions.
or we did a special study.
Well, we can do that here too and bring it to the public, and that's why I say that 3-month timeline is awful skinny.
Yes, I would agree with that as well. Again, a study session format is really a time where you can discuss something for a couple of hours or even 3 hours if necessary, and everybody has a say. And I found those to be very successful in the past.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we're finished with that item, right? Okay. So next agenda item is number 6. Peter?
I'd just like to have, don't put people in temptation. Not that our attorneys are not perfect, unbiased, and so on, but I've seen there should be some kind of control, fallback, or excuse down the road in case it does come up. Because if there's a possibility of conflict of interest, there's going to be another attorney for $5 more or $2 more going to find conflict of interest. If it goes to court or something, I would be better if there is a line of chain of command and responsibility along that line. As far as I'm concerned, I should be a creator because I make no fault. And I'm sure that's my opinion. But down the road, many people find fault in it. They're not perfect, they're educated, they're cute. But don't put an attorney in a position, I don't think there's going to be any fault. I'm going to be totally unbiased. You're putting that person in a position that could possibly come back and get a lot more expensive, if a case comes up. And remember the little litigation down at Olive Trees and the golf course and all that stuff? Planning department had got sent on vacation. Well, there was a conflict of interest in there someplace. You read the whole thing. Don't put the person in a position where, hey, I'm totally unbiased. Okay? The Supreme Court judges couldn't do it. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, this is not about conflict of interest within our office. This would be a potential conflict of interest with outside counsel if our office were to seek outside counsel to help in a matter. Typically, when you seek retaining a law firm, especially since we are a public entity, outside law firms have to do conflict checks. Obviously, if there is a direct conflict that we cannot hire them, we have to look at whether there is a past conflict and analyze whether that past conflict would have any bearing on their ability to properly represent the county in the issue at hand. Or if, and also, that the past conflict is no longer an issue, or that we would also have to look at if there's any potential conflict, potential future conflict, even if it is completely remote, and analyze whether the extent of the conflict and whether their specialty would outweigh the potential of that conflict actually coming into current status rather than a potential status. I believe that our office, we always analyze this before we bring it to the board. Typically, if there is a situation like that, we would have to sign a waiver. This is not asking for anything other than our ability to sign off on those waivers so that the waivers don't have to come to the board. It's not asking for additional authority to enter into contracts. We are still subject to all contracts, to the contract policy. So any contracts for outside representation that meet the thresholds for authority from the CAO and or from the board, the contract would still come to the board for approval if it met the financial threshold for that. This is only for analyzing the potential future risk or analyzing the past conflict and whether that is no longer an issue and whether we would recommend continuing contractual obligations with an outside firm or not. Certainly, if our office would never bring forward a conflict waiver if we felt that there was an actual conflict or that the potential was so significant or imminent that we just wouldn't bring it forward to the board to even consider. We would look for an alternative outside counsel that didn't have that potential. This is really to save time, so if our office or another department needs to seek outside counsel for a specific issue that is within the contract policy for the department head to enter into, we would be able to execute that conflict waiver if necessary, rather than having to wait, agendize the item, bring it to the board, execute the waiver, and then actually get the services rendered. It's really to try to consolidate and streamline the issue.
Yes.
Thank you. All I'm saying is that please, whatever this decided, up to now I trusted her and I will. But either a CEO or a chair should sign off on it also. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Somebody totally away from that profession. And I very highly trust the legal profession. But somebody else should sign off. Some kind of check and balances. So either a CEO or the chair, who happens to be then totally unbiased, ignorant of the situation, like most cases, have somebody else sign off on it. You don't have to bring it from the board. Make him earn the money. Sign off on it. And if something blows up, it's your butt.
Thanks. All right. Any discussion, any more discussion from the public? From the board?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
All right, so we have a motion by Supervisor Wright and a second by Supervisor Kearney to delegation of authority to execute conflict of interest waivers by County Council. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's 4 yes and 1 absent.
Thank you.
Number 7, Behavioral Health Services, Mental Health Program. Peter, you pulled this one.
Is there any way you can cut bureaucracy and red tape? This organization in Sacramento, the money's coming from Sacramento. Isn't it just way to just maybe save a couple of bucks for the taxpayers, and if there's a patient, have them go to Sacramento. You got a whole bunch of transportations going out there. You know, Health and Human Services do have a few cars left over, or an ambulance or whatever. The in-between administration cost. You're getting the money from Sacramento, the patient's here, we administer it, then we take them to Sacramento, to the hospital. I don't believe this shows any place that is a local body that would take care of these patients. Make it faster, quicker, less time, and less money. I mean, it would be nice to have the taxpayers not just pay for administration, but action and efficiency. Just want you to consider it, take a look at it, ask the questions.
Okay. Mary?
Mary Sawicki, Director of Calaveras Health and Human Services. First off, there is no psychiatric facility in Calaveras County. There is a process by which people are determined to be, the process is called 5150. The person is taken to our local Mark Twain Hospital by the Sheriff's Department or the Angels Camp Police. They are evaluated by a mental health professional to be deemed either competent or incompetent, and that happens first here locally. This particular agenda item is to increase by $40,000 the current contract in order for those who are found to be incompetent to be hospitalized and to relieve our local emergency room so that they can continue on with their business.
Okay. Any other public comments?
Or try. This is just straightforward. I mean, if the person's 5150, they're either a danger to themselves or they're a danger to others. And just like Mary said, there are no inpatient services in this county. So patients that are 5150, they have to go somewhere. They have to go to a place where there are 5150 services. That's just the way it is.
Ann Radford, Angels Camp. I am also a family nurse practitioner, and I understand completely what Mary's saying, and I think this is actually not very much money at all to spend for over 3 years to put someone in a facility. There are no beds for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So I agree with George that this is a straightforward thing, and I would hope that you would pass this. Thank you.
Any further discussion from the public? From the board?
I make a motion to approve.
Second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Supervisor Ponte, second by Supervisor Kearney. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it's 4, 1 absent. Okay, number 8. Is that it? Yeah. Peter?
I want to thank the Health and Human Services for every year they prepare for the emergencies. But it would be nice to get a report on it, what was accomplished and why and how, where. I heard a thing that what any and all emergency is going to be, okay? But it would be nice to know what any and all emergency is prepared for. Mount Diablo blows up, earthquake, epidemic. Are they cooperating with the police department, the fire departments, and so on? I mean, if you take a look at the details of where the money is going, every year they train and so on and so on. But how many of the emergency, the fire department or sheriff department or ambulance service, are they involved in it, or just are they getting retrained? I just have a question. Every year we're getting this. And every year they prepare. Is that a new emergency they're preparing for? Or is that the same old one regurgitating? Thank you.
Mary Sawicki, Health and Human Services. This particular agenda item is to enable public health to continue their present contract for emergency services. This is a wide range. It's an ongoing service that we have with the state. It encompasses a number of services, not just one service. It does look at the epidemiology investigations that we do on a number of areas. We just had some last week on Thursday on a number of our healthcare facilities. It also covers the emergency preparedness that we do on an ongoing basis. We have people move in and out of our county on an ongoing basis. We work with Red Cross. We work with our nursing homes, our hospitals. We work with the medical providers. We also have we have a warehouse where we have also a number of equipment. That equipment, as you know, at certain times expires. We have to replace it. We keep inventory. We also, some of the money goes to the hospitals and to the medical facilities. Their equipment expires. There's more recent stuff that also needs to be updated on an ongoing basis. I think it's great in our community that we haven't had emergencies. I hope it stays that way. I don't think it would be a great thing to say, gee, we want to have one and to be able to use this money. But, you know, I think it's great to always be prepared. And we just never know when that's going to be. And so it's for us, it's for our community service providers, it's for a whole wide range of things. So This is just some additional money. Also, I have to say, the issue is that this particular grant, the money is on a federal year, so it comes in late because they don't get their money. Feds start in October. By the time we finish the plan to get it to them, even though it says June 30th, it comes real late, and we have had everything in. We already have ideas of how everything's going to be spent. And actually, we've already expended, and then we're really just paying the bills. Hopefully, if you approve it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comments? Any comments from the board?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Second. All right, I have a motion by Supervisor Pawnee, second by Supervisor Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4, 1 absent. Okay, and we have one last one on the consent agenda. Zachariah. Number 10, adopt a resolution accepting the construction of airfield lighting and electrical project as complete and authorizing the board chair to execute the notice of completion.
Good morning, Zachariah Facilities. The reason I pulled this one is that there is a project description typo on the document notice of completion that needs to be recorded. I have handed the clerk the new copies. Basically, under project or specific part shall include, it should say airfield lighting and electrical improvements, and we have an updated copy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comments? Comments from the board?
Make a motion to approve.
All right. Motion by Supervisor Wright to approve. Second?
I second the motion.
All right. Second by Supervisor Kearney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So it's 4, 1 absent. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute break so we can fix the exit door, so that in case of a real emergency here. I just want to make a comment first before we do this. On number 4, I asked Gary Caldwell to sit down because of his public comment. I shouldn't have done that because he actually brought he's the one that pulled the item, and he should have been allowed to come back up under public comment to speak on that. So I'm apologizing to Gary. It's way. Yeah, so sorry, Gary. I'll catch you later for a cup of coffee or something. Thank you. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, on to our regular agenda. Admin, appointment of applicants to serve on various committees, commissions, advisory boards, and county service areas.
Thank you. We have just one appointment today. It's for the Parks and Rec Commission from District 1, a vacancy with the term expiring 12/31/15, and the applicant is Gordon Long.
All right. All right. So, any public comment on that? Any board comment? Okay, so can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve. I know Gordon, he's a great guy. It's good to pick him.
I second.
Okay, thank you, because I sought after him. So I have a motion by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Kearney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 4-1. 1 absent. That's great. Planning. So this is to amend the zoning of real property in Calaveras County from unclassified to public service for Calaveras Telephone.
Good morning, Darcy Clark, Planning Department. The applicant Calaveras Telephone wishes to merge 3 parcels into one. But in order to do that, they have to rezone two of the parcels that are unclassified to public service, which would match the existing parcel that they want to combine. So the Planning Commission heard the item on May 14th. They recommend approval of rezoning the two parcels, which total 1.64 acres, to PS. And then once that is done, they can finish their lot line adjustment with the surveyor and merge all three to become 4.64 acre parcel. So I can answer any questions you might have.
I do have a question, even though it's not my district at all. But just as general policy goes, is there any way that we, and maybe we'll take care of this after we complete the general plan update, then we do the zoning update after that, and the unclassified will go away, so maybe it's a moot point. But it seems like if there's some way to have a policy that says, if you're doing a boundary line adjustment and the zones are different, and the difference is that one of them's unclassified, the other one's whatever, that it automatically becomes that, so we don't have to go through the zoning change. Can we do that, Megan?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought that you were directing the
question. Well, I think it's more of a question for you or for Peter. I don't know, maybe Darcy knows. Because it seems like there's a long process to go through a zoning change to an unclassified just to do a boundary line adjustment with the neighboring zone. But, could we develop a policy where it said in the boundary line, if you wanted to do a boundary line adjustment and your zones were unclassified, they just became automatically what that other one does. Or don't change them, just, make the boundary line adjustment or, how, so we could work it so we don't have to go through this whole process here that we're going through today to speed up the process.
I understand the desire to streamline it and speed up the process, but you still have to go through the rezone process because you have to allow for the public input and for it to go through the process.
So what if we did this, though? What if we had a policy in place in our zoning code that said if it is an unclassified zone and somebody's doing a boundary line adjustment, it's compatible with that zoning to allow the boundary line adjustment to go forward? And we did that as a public zone change, so then the public would have a chance to have input.
So would you apply that to any and all zoning districts or just to public service?
I don't know. I mean, I was thinking public service in particular because the public service aspect of it, that you're providing a service to the greater public, so you really want to speed it up. That was my thought, but we could look at it broader too.
I do have some concerns with that, but it is something that our office can look into and bring back, work with planning, and
you guys are interested.
And if that is the direction of the board, we can certainly look into it, talk to planning, and then issue a memo on the full legal parameters of implementing a policy like that.
You can't do an automatic zone change. It's a legislative act. You have to have public hearings and go through the whole process. The question then is whether or not we could approve a lot line adjustment without requiring the zone change. And it varies a lot. Sometimes it's, between two residential zones, it's a minor tweak, and, other than creating an overlap where the zoning doesn't line up with the boundaries. And there are ways you can do that by sort of addressing it, sort of an annual cleanup. Kind of we gather all the lot line adjustments that require a zone change. We sort of do it in one action, sort of sponsored by the county as opposed to each individual. But sometimes the lot line adjustment stays between a commercial and residential zone, and the commercial zone is expanding into the residence. That has more environmental concerns that we have to address. So, but I think that, as Megan suggests, that we look at some of the options and maybe bring back a report to you to look at what things we could do.
Although from what I heard from Supervisor Wright was that he was thinking that it would only apply if one of the parcels being merged was unclassified, rather than it being commercial to residential. But I do think that it would be something that we can look at and then propose what options the board has for some kind of a policy, like Peter said, as far as doing more of a comprehensive annual cleanup to streamline things rather than doing it on a project-by-project basis.
Rather than doing this at this time, wouldn't it be prudent just to include this with the general plan update?
Well, we could certainly do that, and with the zoning ordinance update that we will need to do after the general plan is.
I'm just looking out like it's going to be 5 years before we get to that point.
Yeah, I understand.
So, but we could adopt, certainly the board could adopt a policy that doesn't require a significant ordinance amendment to allow us to provide some flexibility in our procedure, just a procedural process we would need to go through. We'll look into that further and come back to you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment, please?
House County Taxpayer Association. We had something similar to this in Copperopolis. We had property that was unclassified. It's the Old Corner Saloon. And the planning department, under a previous planning director, tried to force them to go through a zoning change, cost like $3,000, so he could have outside tables for the food he serves. And because the ABC, who we applied for, required the county to approve his application. Well, what happened was the supervisor in that area and the planning director got together, and they believed that, and they did, that just a determination by the planning director that it was a pre-existing condition. It was commercial for 100 years. And so nothing further needed to be done. And it was totally by the action of the planning director. Maybe this thing is simpler than it looks.
Any other public comment? Comments from the board? Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I second the motion.
All right, motion by Supervisor Pondy, second by Supervisor Kearney. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that's 4 yes and 1 absent. Number 14, adopt a resolution to create a designated fund for Calaveras County adult tutoring. Hi,
Good
Pat.
morning, ladies and gentlemen. Pat Ross for Adult Tutoring. What we have here today is a pretty uncomplicated request for a resolution being passed for a designated fund for literacy fundraising monies. These monies are currently being collected, and the contributions are made to the nonprofit, 503, 501, I'm not sure which, are Friends of the Library. So it's 3, right? And so they go into a very specific literacy fund in their organization. We'd like to set up, at the recommendation of our CAO and our auditor, a designated fund by which we can transfer those contributions to county account on a periodic basis, and I can withdraw funds for that to operate.
Okay. Any public comments on this?
Questions?
I have a question. I would very much like to support that lady. My question is, how much is the county going to skim off of that money? As far as, is it going to be free? Is it 1%, 1.5% for administration costs? It's just, because I've seen, there was a big thing about some perfectly good, collection of money for good deeds, and there was a list of them. Greatly supported. You're going to put 2 jars up. Some of you were here that collect from all the county buildings that people can put money into it. But you know what ticked me off? That the bottom line was the administration wanted a 1.5% skim off of it for administering it. I don't know, some of you might remember it, okay? Now, this lady I support her, that's wonderful. I'm all for it. But the suggestion for ease, there's a number of banks in town. put the money in there, you have access to it, have 2 or 3 signatures on it. That would be a whole lot cheaper than putting all those poor people in the next building, forcing them to skim off on 1%, 1.5%, or whatever it is going to for administration costs. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to that, if I may. Quite honestly, there isn't going to be any skimming or expense to the literacy department, and these contributions will move intact from the Friends of the Library Fund to the government designated fund. And you'll be relieved to know that this money can't even be transferred to the general fund. It is a designated fund specifically for the purpose of the literacy department use, and there are no fees whatsoever involved in it. Am I correct?
That is correct. And in addition, because it will be housed in the county treasury, it can be accounted for, and it will earn more interest, a little bit than it is, than it would if it was in a bank. And because it is county funds, it has to be housed in the county treasury.
So the lady who's going to handle the money and then you're going to work free that day, right?
No, she's not going to work free, but the money goes specifically into a designated fund, and there will be no administrative fees charged to that designated fund. That money will be used solely for the purpose of Calaveras adult tutoring.
Yeah. That means $1 in, $1 out, Peter.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's
So,
going to be free college education in California.
all right. So, any other public comments? All right. Comments from the board?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Pani to approve.
I second the motion.
Second by Supervisor Kearney. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. 4, 1 absence. Okay. Here we go. I am 8 minutes late.
He's just going to want comments.
All right, so what do you need?
I'm going to need to set up with it.
All right, so we're going to take another little break here while setup is achieved for our budget hearings.
Next board.
Rebecca?
Okay, that's what's the. Oh my God, it scared me. I thought I don't like it. It's just the poison was in there.
We're waiting for Rebecca. There she is. All right. Okay, you ready?
Ready.
All right, so welcome back, and we're entering into our most exciting part of the meeting today. For these guys. And so, Shirley?
Thank you, Supervisor Edson. We're here today to kick off the fiscal year 15-16 recommended budget hearings. So basically, we were scheduled to start at 11 a.m., which we're close. We're only 10 minutes late. And we'll continue at the conclusion of each day until the board closes the budget hearings. The tentative schedules for subsequent days is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The Planning Commission has the room on Thursday, so then if need be, we'll return on Friday on June 12th. I'll do my budget presentation, public comment, questions from the board. Then this afternoon we have scheduled 3 formal presentations from departments. First will be the library, then probation, and then the sheriff. After that, I think that will pretty much take up the rest of the afternoon. We can come back on Wednesday, and the board, if they have specific questions or want information from departments, they can let us know, and we'll have those departments here for you to, so that they can answer your questions. So just to put it in economic context, there's no huge change in the local economy. The national economy continues to recover. California is moving faster probably than the rest of the nation. We're seeing housing prices rebound faster and more, mainly the urban and coastal areas of the state. The inland areas are a lot slower, and the rural areas even slower than that. But we do see local housing prices trending up, but as I said, slower than other areas of the state. And what we don't know right now is what the drought, how it may impact our economic recovery, and of course how long this drought is going to last. So some of the local economic indicators are the property tax revenues continue to rise as assessed values increase. If you remember, we were pleasantly surprised when the rolls closed in 14-15, and we had a 6.1% increase. Again, as the assessor reminds us, every year there are corrections ongoing after the roll closes, so we never know exactly where the property tax rolls will end up at the end of the fiscal year. I talked to the assessor a great deal, and she provided me with an estimated increase for 15-16 of 4% to the property tax rolls. What we're also seeing is an increase of about 5% in 14-15 for local sales tax, and so we've budgeted that 5% increase for the 15-16. Building permit fees, again, we're seeing that gradual increase, which is always a good sign, as well as sewage systems or septic tank applications, because those are all the time to the first step before the home is built. So we're also seeing those increase. And this is just basically the assessed value of our property tax roll in billions. As you can see, in 2008, we were at our highest with a little over $7 billion, and then it went down as the recession hit and property values dropped. And then in 2013, we saw a very slight incremental increase. I think it was like 0.04%. And then we're moving up. And so at least we're heading in the right direction again. So Mary Rose is going to talk about where we are, just bring you up to date for fiscal 14-15 for the third quarter general fund status.
We're just going to take a quick look at the revenue of our third quarter status. All things being considered, when third quarter ends March 31st, 2015, we should have revenue received of about 75%. Things that you want to consider when looking at our actual percentage received is our property taxes. We receive about 55%, that's apportioned in December, with the balance that's posted in April, and our true-up that's come in June. So what you see in our property taxes is not the full amount, just that 55% that was apportioned in December. As Shirley May mentioned, our sales tax is up about 5%, so that is reflective there, and also our license, permits, and franchise fees are doing better than expected in our building departments. And our state revenue, if you look at our state revenue, is down at about 54%. That's due to our DLF. 50% of that is posted in January, with the remainder posted in May, so the additional 50% is not reflected here, and that 1.9 first 50% is there. Also, reimbursement grants that come from the state, that is dependent on departments claiming on a timely basis and seeking those reimbursements. So if departments haven't done those timely reimbursements, it's not going to be reflected there in our state revenue. Our operating transfers in, that does not reflect the teeter that we had anticipated coming in. That won't be done until the end of the year. So if we take a look at our year-to-year comparison from March 2014 to now, March 2015, we're actually pretty much on track from our year-over-year. Like we made mention, we're seeing an uptake in the building and planning and septic systems. And also, one thing that we want to take a look at, a big difference from last fiscal year, is our other financing sources. You're going to see a big increase from the $48,000 versus the $937,000 in revenue, and that was due to an accounting procedure that we changed in going into 14-15. Previously, we had posted interdepartmental county reimbursements as a negative expense. These are now reflected in a revenue line item, and so we see that reflected as another financing source as a revenue instead of posted as an offset to actual expenses. So that is accounted for in that drastic increase in revenue right there. Also, if the operating transfers in, you're going to see a decrease there because we are relying less on teeter, and so the decrease in teeter is going to be reflected in that decrease in revenue. Moving on to expenditures. Salaries and benefits are on track to where we should be about. We said about 75%. They're at about 73% by the end of close of third quarter. Remember, we took on the 4% COLA that happened in January. So our fourth quarter is going to be a little bit slightly increased due to the full encompassing of that 4% COLA. Other spending is lower than anticipated. However, we have not finished out the fourth quarter, so we can't really anticipate what the actual expenditures are going to be by the end of the fiscal year, although right now they are showing lower than expected. Operating transfers out. We won't, like I said before, we won't do the teeter until the end of the fiscal year, so that isn't anticipated right now in our expenditures. And we haven't used any contingencies as of March 31st, 2015. Looking at our year-to-year comparison for expenditures, we're pretty much on par from last fiscal year. However, the 4% COLA hit, and so we did see a little bit of that change in salaries and benefits. However, and thanks to departments, we are showing reduced spending. But like I stated, we need to be aware that we haven't accounted for the full fourth quarter yet. So we could see an increase to services and supplies, but departments right now are reducing their spending. So as far as the third quarter summary looks, right now our revenues are at $21,659,000, or at 63.8%. Remember, property tax revenues posted, they're not going to have posted until April, with the remainder coming in, or the true up being in June. So that did not take into account the actual revenue in that $21 million. The VLF also was posted in May, so it doesn't account for in that $21 million. And then the balance transfers from designated funds. Our expenditures are more than the actual revenues we have received. They're at a $26.5 million. That's slightly lower than the 75% expected. However, we are exceeding our revenues by about $4.9 million at the moment.
So let's talk a little bit about the recommended budget development. The budget process and timeline are governed by state law and guided by the board's principles. It's governed by the State Budget Act. Some of the milestones are in December, January, we kind of kick off the process. The CAO and departments identify key issues, and we bring to the board the mid-year budget report. And with that, we bring recommendations on the development of the following year's budget. And hopefully we get concurrence with the board, and based on the board's direction, we move forward and send out the instructions to departments in March. Usually, for some very strange reason, department budgets are due back to the CAO, auditor, and HR on April 1st. It's just something, April Fool's Day seems like such a good day. During the month of April and May, we meet with departments, sometimes more than once. We try and get concurrence. We look at what their needs, what they've proposed, and try and work with them to come to agreement on their budgets. Then we have our recommended budget hearings in June, and then a final, which is mainly technical adjustments, in September. Again, this is a process that really involves all departments and staffs throughout the organization, and it's a pretty busy time for everyone. So again, I mentioned that it's the budget is developed based on the board's adopted budget principles, and I think you've seen these numerous times, but some of the really important ones, I think, are conservative and rational revenue estimates, avoiding one-time solutions to our budget problems, though when things were really tight and we were facing a significant deficit, we had used those one-time solutions. Public safety has always been identified as the highest spending priority. We try and maintain costs by controlling our personnel expenditures because they are, in fact, our largest portion of our budget. Again, with the nominal funds, we try and maintain if anything, only the required general fund contribution. We strive for a healthy reserve of 3 to 4% contingency, grants funding that enhances and improves county programs, and that the budget should support a diverse, prosperous, and sustainable economy. So the board direction for 2015-16 on the recommendation of the CAO's office was a status quo budget. And after last year's budget, when we asked departments to reduce between 8 and 10%, we thought this was a really good step in the right direction. But it still was difficult for departments, quite frankly, because a status quo budget means that the department's general fund contribution would remain at the same level as the 14-15 adopted budget, unless there was some specific appropriation that was done mid-year for an ongoing service that the board had approved. And one of the other things that we talked about at mid-year was to pursue the cost recovery of services, that we would bring back to the board a review of all county fees prior to final budget. The Auditor Control and I will be working on easy format for departments to follow to ensure that they cover all the costs involved in the county fees for the services that they provide. Again, we'd like to, and the board agreed at mid-year, to maintain a hard hiring freeze through 15-16. What this does is ensure that only funded positions are filled, because all of those have to come through the CAO's office. And we continue the multi-year process to align the general fund revenues and expenditures. So let's talk about the recommended budget. For all funds, the total appropriations are $121 million, with revenues of $106 million, the difference being the fund equity in each of those funds of nearly $6 million. $16 million, thank you. Okay. But it breaks out by the different major funds: general public works, integrated waste management, health and human services, capital improvements, and the enterprise funds, transit, and airport. The other encompasses the smaller non-general funds. So in looking at the funding, we're seeing, again, a small increase in the taxes. Part of it is due to the 4% estimated increase in property taxes. Part of it is the 5% in sales taxes. And property taxes being the larger portion of that line item, it kind of evened out to 4.7%. Again, we're seeing growth in licenses, permits, and franchise fees. A lot of that has to do with the development and construction costs. The other big one is that other financing sources. Again, I think Mary Rose explained again that we had changed the process to capture the revenue of the reimbursed county expenses as a revenue instead of an expenditure. One of the other things, the use of teeter and fund balance, though it looks about the same, the fund balance includes $1.5 million for IT infrastructure projects. So teeter is being used in this budget, or proposed to be used in this budget, for kind of what it was set aside for, is IT, information technology, infrastructure, capital projects. So in addition to the $1.5 million for Teeter, it includes the $250,000 annual contribution from Teeter to the general fund. When the county decided to enter into the Teeter program, one of the concerns of the board at that time was that the general fund is going to miss out on the money it normally got for fines and penalties. So part of the agreement that the board said, when we go forward with the Teeter program, there will be an annual contribution from Teeter of $250,000. So in the last couple of years when we've talked about fund balancing, we've included that $250,000, but again, that is an annual contribution. So what we have seen, if you take into account that annual contribution, 2 years ago it was $3.5 million that we had to budget to balance the budget. Last year it was 1.5. If you remember, it was actually 1.6, but again, removing that $250,000. And this year it's $728,000. So we have again reduced the use of one-time monies. And that's just a pretty graph showing how it's divided, the revenue is divided. So general appropriations, when compared to the final adopted budget, we saw a 12.5% increase to general government departments. Part of a good portion of that was for the clerk recorder's vital statistic data system. It is, in fact, offset with costs from her designated fund. Also, the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement was included, and this year compared to adopted budget of last year. Again, development services, those are increased by proposed additions of positions to those departments, and they have the offsetting revenue to cover the cost of those. Under miscellaneous, those increased costs are insurance premiums and the $1.5 million for the infrastructure projects, IT infrastructure projects. So when you compare the appropriations for the recommended budget against final adopted, you can see there's some have gone up, some have gone down a little bit. General government overall has decreased 2.3%. Public safety has gone up 5.2%. Development services has gone up 4.6%. Health and human services 7.3%. And that's mainly because of the Veteran Services Representative position that we're recommending that be included and funded in the county budget, recommended budget, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And miscellaneous, the reason for the decrease was this is where those audit payments that we were repaying for the property tax and court audit came out of here, so that contributes to the reduction there. We're done. It's done. It's over.
Was that like, what, 3 years? 3 years.
But we did it in two because we paid.
There was $45 there, though. I saw that.
We're not going to get a penalty on the $45, right?
And so then just another graph so that you can see the split between health and human services, education, general government, and public safety. So where are in relationship by classification of our appropriations, and salary and benefits have gone up 7.7%. Part of that will be because of the 4% COLA is for the entire fiscal year. Part of it was increased PERS, and part of it will be because of the recommended addition of certain positions. Services and supplies, again, a slight increase. We see things like utilities going up. We see things, gas and oil going up. So some of that had to be taken into account for. Capital assets, though they've increased substantially, they all have non-general fund funding sources. Alone, as I mentioned, the recorder's new data collection system is $450,000. So But overall, in appropriation for contingencies, I'm going to touch on this a number of times throughout the presentation, is gone down 28.6%. And the reason for that is the recommended budget only includes a 2% contingency. Now, that's lower than what the recommended budget principles state, but very often at recommended budget we will do a lower than 3% or 4% contingency and then adjust it at final budget.
Sure.
Again,
Can I
we'll
ask
talk
a question?
Sure.
What are some examples that would cause us to get into that contingency fund?
Biggest one I can think of is the wildfire and fire.
Thanks.
But it can also, we've hit contingencies this fiscal year for fourth quarter, but it's been, I think we started at 1.3 million, right? Contingencies for 1.1.
1.14.
Okay, and now it's down to, I forget what it's down to now. But we have hit it this year, and it happens because there's an unforeseen something that happens. Someone's revenue doesn't come in that they thought was going to come in. It could be, something, a service that needs to be provided that the CAO's agreement needs to occur for the public safety or whatever it is. That can also be a hit on contingency as well, and we have seen that. Likely, if we don't close the year with the anticipated revenues, you'll see me coming back to the board asking for a reduction in contingencies in order to offset those shortages. But yes, it's generally if there was some sort of emergency that caused us to have to dip into that.
Thank you.
So again, the appropriations by class, and as you can see, the largest share of that is salary and benefits. It takes up about 59% of the general fund. So general fund revenues contribution, it's actually it should say general fund appropriations versus general fund contribution. The general fund appropriations by functional group, as you can see, 23% of the appropriations go to general government, 43.9% to public safety, and so on down the line. And then we talk about the general fund contribution. The general fund contribution, for those who don't know or understand, there are departments that get their own revenue source, whether it's through grants, whether it's through fees, or whatever. So they take into that revenue and that comes into their budget unit. Their appropriations, they pay out salary, benefits, services, and supplies. The difference between the revenue that they take in that's specific to their department, less the appropriation, that gap is filled with the general fund contribution. So with general government, the total of those departments was about 20% of the overall general fund contribution, public safety 50%. Whoops, sorry. Got little fast fingers here. Public safety 50%, development services 12%, and down the line. So, and people often think public safety is just the sheriff's office, but it's not. It encompasses the sheriff, probation, district attorney, public defender, county fire, such as it is, and the coroner, public administrator. And again, the breakdown of that in both appropriations and general fund contribution, the highest portion of that going to the sheriff and all of his budget units. 67% of the appropriations and 72% of the general fund contribution that goes to public safety. So I want to talk about a little bit about the staffing that I've included in the recommended budget, and obviously it will be up to the board to whether they agree with those recommendations or not. But when we were considering adding positions, because we are still using some one-time money to balance the budget, we looked at whether they had non-general fund source to cover the position, whether the revenues that they were proposing to use to cover the cost was a stable funding source so that it would support the positions going forward. If there was a general fund cost, some of the positions do, we waited, was it a stated priority of the board at mid-year or earlier? And we looked at, we weighted against the benefit versus the cost. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that before, as what we looked at, the criteria we used, and going forward. So the first one is the auditor controller. She has been without an assistant auditor controller for, I don't know how many years, I think since you took office. She's had an increase in revenues from the indirect cost allocation plan, formerly known as A87, that will cover the cost of both her reclassifications from the accountant auditor 2 to the assistant auditor controller and the account tech 3 to the account tech 4. In elections, it was a reclassification of an election coordinator to an election coordinator 1-2. It provides a series and a career ladder for advancement in future years when that person has the training, the experience, and the knowledge to move into another position. Is there any cost involved this year? No. Also reclassifying the election supervisor to a recorder clerk. This allows the clerk recorder to have flexibility to use that position anywhere in her office that she needs it. So this allows for a lot of cross-training within her office. And there's an actual savings involved of a little over $4,200 for that. The district attorney, the new position for the paralegal criminal, it was really interesting. Even before when the budgets went out, I had 3 department heads come to me and say, Charlie, we have this great idea for a shared position. And given the board's direction of how we can move forward and consolidate some positions and services, I had my ears open. And what they wanted to do is create a paralegal criminal position that was shared between the district attorney, animal services, and code compliance. It would help the district attorney at her office preparing cases. It would help animal services preparing cases, and I apologize, that should be 40% animal services and 20%. Oh, it is. I'm confusing myself. 40% for animal services, and they would help prepare civil and criminal cases with dangerous animals, etc. And code compliance would help with their cases, the legal aspects of it. Now, because it's a shared cost, it does require a $51,000 general fund contribution. However, the $12,835 will be covered with code compliance funding, which is made up of vehicle, abandoned vehicle abatement and nuisance abatement and road purpose base. Also, she requested that we find a district attorney investigator 1 in January. And this is because she has a position or an employee that is wanting to retire at the end of the fiscal year. This will give an overlap for those positions so that they can train, get up to speed on cases, know where the investigations are, and basically learn what and how it's done in that area. And that way, at the end of the year, depending on where revenues are, depending on availability, we can again fund the retiring district attorney investigator 1 position, or look at other options. Also last year, there was a limited term investigative trial support assistant that was scheduled for layoff. The board agreed to fund it for 1 additional year because of the nature of the cases in the VA's office. That position was funded through June 30th. It was scheduled to be eliminated June 30th of this year, and that is not included in the budget. So here's the big one, information technology reorg. We've had a lot of issues in technology services, not to mention the fact that our infrastructure is antiquated and dying. But also because where we're located, we have to compete with the Bay Area and the IT firms down there, Sacramento, what have you. And the way TSD, hopefully we'll be renaming it to Information Technology Division, was formulated and established, the positions were very, very specific. You had a network specialist 1, you had a network specialist 2, you had a network specialist 3. So when you were going out to hire, you couldn't say, I want to get one of them. You had to hire specifically for what that position was. So we would go out and recruit for a network specialist 3, and we would get qualified candidates for a 1 or a 2, but because the position was a 3, it didn't allow us to hire them because they didn't meet the qualifications. So we looked carefully at how to structure this, and one of the main things was to create a series. It does 2 things. The series goes network specialist 1, 2, 3, and so when we recruit, we can recruit as a 1, 2, 3. And when the positions come in, we can look at them and say, maybe we need a 3, but we can really make do with a 2 and hire the person in as a 2 or a 1 and train them throughout. It also provides a career ladder for our current employees. When you're in a position and there is no career ladder involved or it's not part of the series, in order to move up to the next one, that has to become vacant or you have to reclassify the position. So one of the big things is reclassifying the network specialist 1 and 2 and 3 into a series. And with that, we would eliminate the computer support techs and make them 1s. We would reclassify our program analyst 3 to a network specialist 2, and a business analyst 2 to a network specialist 2. When we were doing this, we were looking at actual job duties as well as job descriptions. We've written a lot of the job descriptions to be reflective of the duties and the qualifications that are needed. We've created the network specialist manager position and are eliminating a vacant network specialist 4 position. And we're reclassifying the IT manager to be level, since it's a division of the administrative office, the same as the HR deputy CAO. So what does all this cost us? The reorg cost $30,973. And one of the things, and while that's a good chunk of change, in the administrative office and in the HR division of the administrative office, we've reduced our general fund cost contribution to over $300,000. So I think that more than covers the $30,000 here. And again, in addition, we would like to change the name to be more reflective of the times and make it Information Technology Division or IT. So I'll be referring to IT in place of the old TSD. Also, in here are under the sheriff, he requested a new position, and this is the school resource officer. We had a lot of discussion when the COPS hiring grant came to the board for approval, and the board at that time indicated interest in funding a school resource officer. Additionally, at mid-year, the subject came up again, and again, I heard from the majority of the board that they were interested in funding a school resource officer. When I had a conversation with the sheriff, they said that the initial money that they thought might be available through CHP was not, and there was no funding through the schools. Also funded is a deputy sheriff position that was previously unfunded, and this is in the senior Calima budget unit. And again, grant funds will cover $80,000 of this position with a county general fund cost of $10,630. Unlike the COPS hiring grant, where there was a huge county cost versus a very small grant, this one was just the opposite, with a large grant-funded cost and a small county contribution. Also, they're asking to reclassify a sergeant to a lieutenant in the jail. The lieutenant that was budgeted and funded out of the jail was moved and is being funded out of dispatch and OES, and that position is overseeing those 2 areas as well as court security. And probation, The probation department is requesting a deputy probation officer. Will be in the juvenile division, and it will be funded with 3 state juvenile resources, and it really doesn't increase the general fund contribution at all. It's fully funded by the state. In planning, things are getting busy and picking up. Their revenues have increased, and substantially enough that they are able to request a Planner 3 position with no increase to the general fund contribution. They're also requesting to reclassify a Planner 4 to a Planner 1-2. There's actually no cost or savings because that position is currently underfilled with a Planner 1-2, and it really makes more sense because they're actually different bargaining units. A Planner 4 is considered mid-management, where the Planner 1-2 is considered to be miscellaneous. The building department, given the number of plans and building permits that are being pulled for numerous reasons, it is delaying the process because we have a single plan checker or plan examiner. And their fees have increased over the last few years, and they can well afford to cover the cost with their permit fees of the new plan checker. Even if something drastic happened at this point and construction stopped, they have enough in their designated fund again to cover this, cover the shortfall revenue, but I think that's unlikely to happen at this juncture. Co-compliance also is requesting 2 new positions. See that extra hire permit tech 1-2 really saw the benefit of that, and they're asking it to become a permanent position. They've requested another code enforcement officer. They have a backlog of, I think it's over 1,200 cases at the moment. And the permit tech will allow the code enforcement officers to get back out in the field and deal with the issues out there. And again, that is funded with ABA money, abandoned vehicle money, nuisance abatement money, and 25% of their total budget is covered by building fees. Animal Services Division, you heard Focus speak this morning in support of this position. With the 2 new increased shelter space for the cats, it really will require some additional help out there. And talking with the department head, he originally put forth it for the majority of the year, agreed to wait until mid-year to ensure that revenues were on track and that we could continue to fund the position with general fund dollars, because this is a 100% general fund dollar position. However, what it will allow, currently we have 2 animal control officers that cover the entire county, and currently they're spending 25% of their time in the shelter or in the office just because of limited staff. And finally, even though it says Health and Human Services, this is actually a general fund position. In 2008, the board appointed a Veteran Services Officer, known as the VSO, and she works in Health and Human Services. She provides 100% of her time is spent on assisting veterans and their families. Now, this position has a small county share cost, but it is also funded because she is technically ineligible, or additionally an eligibility worker 3. She can provide those other services for the veterans and their families that she couldn't provide if she was just strictly a BSO. She can help them apply for Medi-Cal, for food stamps, for cash assistance, for general assistance, for whatever is required, as well as the benefits they would get through the VA. What we have seen is a growth in our veteran population. Last year through a grant, we had an extra hire position, and it really made a difference in the services that were provided. This position will be a VSR, or Veteran Service Representative, and will again assist in VSO in providing the services to the veterans. I know, again, this was one position I heard the board that was very interested in. We've had the veterans here speak a number of times talking about a veteran service officer should be counting costs. Well, veteran services officer can be counting costs, but there is also the offset from the state that we get that can be applied to it. But the additional position will provide those additional services for the veterans and their family. And we got a very nice letter, I believe it was addressed to Supervisor Edson, about the success of the program here in Calaveras County and the increase in benefits that have been provided in this past year to the veterans in our county, both through the VA and through the normal services done by Human Services Division of Health and Human Services.
I have a question.
Sure.
Will this be a line item in our budget going forward so that we don't have to recreate this every year?
Right. As long, once the position is created and funded, it will be a general fund contribution ongoing.
So if we okay this going forward, next year we don't have to resurrect this discussion again?
We do not. Where the transfers that would occur to Health and Human Services from the general fund is in budgeted and called county contributions.
Thank you.
So just a few other staffing changes that are non-general fund, and there is no general fund cost. In Public Works, the Equipment Service Center is looking for a new position, a 45 FTE Administrative Services Officer. They're looking to reclassify a Permit Tech 3 to a Permit Public Works Analyst 1 and transfer that position from Roads and Bridges to Administration. They're looking to reclassify an Engineer Tech 2 to a Public Works Analyst 2 in the Roads and Bridges Division. And they're looking for a number of transfers between divisions, as outlined there. Health and Human Services, again, these positions are funded with state and federal funding as well as realignment dollars. Human Services is looking for an employment training worker, and these are people that help try and find clients, find the jobs, get the skills that they need to move off of public assistance. We're also looking for a social worker 4, a transportation officer, and a staff services analyst to assist the director. Public Health is looking to increase the time for 0.5 to 1.0 FTE for the emergency preparedness manager, and in doing so, eliminating a contract. In mental health, and this is all mental health service dollars, it's a case manager 3, 2 case manager 2s, a community health assistant 3, an office tech 1, and an increase in time for the mental health community services liaison from 0.5 to 1.0. And just to review our capital projects, capital improvement projects, we still have money in there for the ADA improvements to this building, making the restrooms ADA compliant, the rear stairs ADA compliant, remodeling offices for the county council to relocate, and then upgrades to the government center HVAC system. We need some work done in this building, given how warm it is in this room. We also need work done in the old the county museum, which was the old courthouse, and delta controls for the HVAC system that will allow facilities to better manage the whole system. We have, as you recall, I think it was the last board meeting, we brought to the board to disqualify all bids and go out for another RFP broken down by project for the remodel, first phase remodel of this building. One of the other issues that we've come up with is that at night, for the night meetings, it's very dark going up the steps and down into the parking lot. We've received some estimates for the parking lot in the area lighting in that area to make it safer. for those night meetings, and the estimate is about $25,000, and that will really improve the safety of the area. We're looking at government center roofing. The 3 brick buildings need to be roofed again. We identified last winter some issues with the land use building and the electrical feeder that need to be repaired. And then public works structural improvements that include the Red Hill Annex improvements, the Red Hill slide repair, the exhaust system for the shop, and the Glencoe Yard generator. Capital assets included in the budget for general fund departments is, as I've mentioned a number of times, the Recorder's Vital Statistics Data System of $450,000. The sheriff is requesting to command vehicles that he's paying out of AB 443 money. The jail needs the palm scanner to go with the live scan, $15,000 that will come out of the Criminal Justice Facilities Designated Fund. An environmental health is requesting a 4x4 sports utility vehicle that will be funded with the local primary agency or LPA grant. Transit is an enterprise fund, so all these funds will be funded out of the transit fund, and usually it's state and federal money. And those are buses, minivans, a pickup truck, and the ongoing bus stop improvements. Integrated Waste Management is looking to install an air curtain wither, and again, that comes out of the solid waste fund. Human Services is looking for 1 vehicle, and with that they will surplus 2 high mileage vehicles that have extremely high mileage and high repair costs. They need a printer, scanner, copier. Public Health, again, is requesting a vehicle. Mental Health is requesting 4 vehicles, which again, they will surplus 4 high mileage, excessive repair cost vehicles that are safe and unreliable for both staff and clients. And there are no general fund costs, and a network printer copier as well. So some other capital projects or assets is parking lot improvement up at the airport at $41,000. Again, it's an enterprise fund. It comes out of the airport fund. The server for the sheriff's office, that comes out of the civil fees designated fund. And the Murphy and Sliding District is looking to fund 2 street lights out of their fund. So there were a few other requests from departments or issues that came up that required general fund appropriations. One of them was when facilities moved to public works. Facilities used to be under admin, so it was just general fund costs. There was some other charges. But when they moved to public works, the administrative cost of public works is spread across all their budget units, much like the indirect costs are, only it's based on how much time they spend on each of their budget units or divisions. And there was no tracking done this past year, so when Public Works submitted it to me, I went, I think we need to come up with better methodology. We reduced the amount that they were requesting by half, actually, a little over half, I think, and asked them to set up a system because they track everything they do through their cost accounting system, or CAMS, and said, we need to track the cost and we will actually transfer the costs as they incur. But we budgeted $44,000 for that. We increased the agricultural budget by $15,721 in anticipation that the board might approve that contract today. Had you not approved it, we would have taken out the revenue and the cost associated with that contract. The district attorney is still working a number of large cases where they need litigation expert witness costs. This was basically money that was not spent in 14-15, so we rolled it forward even though it changed their status quo. Public defender, you approved the 3-year extension of the contract at the last board meeting, and those additional costs are included. The sheriff, when he submitted his budget, the overtime, gas and oil, and vehicle maintenance were extremely low, and so we augmented them with $77,000 for overtime, $87,000 for increase to gas and oil, and $40,000 for vehicle maintenance. One issue that came up after the budget was kind of put together was the Calaveras Amador Macquarie River Authority dues for 15-16. My understanding that dues have been suspended for a number of years. This has not come to the board. I had no idea what the direction of the board would be on whether or not they wanted to maintain their membership in the authority, and if so, if they were willing to budget and pay the dues for 15-16. If so, it can be added prior to adoption of the resolutions, budget resolutions. So, looking ahead. So, what are the risks that we're facing? The 15-16 budget includes a full year of the 4% COLA. We knew it was going to happen. We've also seen associated increase with benefit costs, those that are a percentage of salaries. Another big thing on the horizon is that our contracts with all our bargaining units expire December 31st, 2015 of this year. With that, we will be looking at opening bargaining with those units, and it will be interesting to see where they go. Rebecca has spoken many times about PERS increases and the changes to PERS that will affect our rates over the next 5 years. IT infrastructure, it's really critical that we start investing in our IT infrastructure. It's been put off for 7 or 8 years. One of the things that we discovered was how critical it was not more than a couple of months ago when we had a near catastrophic failure of one of our servers. And with it, some files were corrupted. It took a week, many hours on IT's part, and departments struggling to work with IT to identify files that might have been corrupted or were missing. It's really time to invest in the IT infrastructure. The IT manager put together, working with vendors, working with staff, put together a plan, a 2-year plan of needs for the county with some estimated costs regarding high and low. They range from $1.2 million to $2.4 million over the next 2 years. We recognize that we can't get all of that done in a single year, so we budgeted $1.5 million for those projects. As we identify the most critical and come forward to the board with those projects, they will be set up, and the accounting system is a child ledger so that the auditor can keep track of them for recording of the capital asset, and it will come to the board with the benefits, the costs, and the contracts for those items. But and Teeter is providing the funding for the ongoing IT projects. One of the things I do want to say is we can spend $1.5 million, $2 million over the next 2 years, but if we don't maintain those on an ongoing basis and we stop funding those projects as are identified, we're going to be in the same situation we are in now, 7 years from now, with a large expense. The ongoing cost will nearly be the $1.5 million and $2 million, but IT is working on a 5-year plan so that we're never back in the position that we are in today, and really basically having to reconstruct our infrastructure because so many of our servants are past end of life, and our system is crumbling. And quite frankly, it affects everything that we do, from email to phones to our financial system to other systems that the department has, our public works, cost accounting system, Megabyte, property tax system anyway. It affects everything, so it's really critical that we start investing. Another significant cost is we've been deferring things around here for a long time, and eventually it's going to catch up with us, just like IT infrastructure. So as we see those funds become available, we need to start developing a plan, and I believe our Public Works Director has been working on that and will be bringing that forward as well.
Sure. So every year I have the same mantra that Teeter is there, but we're using it. So, and its original purpose was to fund technology projects because they are so expensive and we rely on it so heavily. But as the years have gone by, we've used it to have stopgap in our revenues. And, we kind of all agreed that that was the least painful way of going about it. We could have a soft landing on the other side. So we've kind of all participated in that. Based on the information that we have to date, I'm guessing that our Teeter balance will be about $7.1 million as of June 30th. And then our projected uses for the 15-16 fiscal year is just under $2.5 million, the $1.5 million of technology projects that Shirley just spoke about, the $250,000, which is our annual general fund contribution, and $728,000 is our stopgap. And then we estimate, about $1 million. That's going to be a really interesting figure to follow because the Treasurer Tax Collector sent out a new looking bill, and it had the due date circled. So everybody thought she changed the due date. Really, it was the same due date it's always been. But we noticed a lot more people paid their taxes on time, which is great from a cash flow perspective, but it's not good for Teeter because Teeter is penalties and interest. So we only get money if people pay their taxes late. So it'll be interesting to see what this year's revenue is going to be for, or next year's revenue is going to be for that. But so with those uses and that projected revenue, we're looking at a balance of $5.6 million, which will be the lowest that Teeter's been in a really long time. But, I'm happy to say that it's going, a huge chunk of it is going for the purposes that was originally intended for that fund. And less for the stopgap. But of course, if, this entire recommended budget is dependent on the fact that a large portion of what, there is a $2.4 million cash carry number that we're assuming we're going to end with. So if it ends up being lower, we'll have a problem, and probably we'll be looking at Teeter again.
And as Rebecca said, it really is a good thing that the largest share of what we're using Teeter for is actually what we were, what it was meant to be used for. So general fund contingencies and reserves, and we touched a little bit on this before. The board's budget principle contingencies ideally should be 3 to 4% of general fund appropriations. What this does is helps with cash flow at the beginning of the fiscal year prior to our major source of revenue coming in, which is property taxes in December. It's the contingencies are there to cover unanticipated expenses. And of course, we're a little bit at risk because of the drought. We have an increase of risk of wildland and fire. But as Rebecca said, it's not just for the big events. It's for those unanticipated costs that we see throughout the year. In the past, we've adopted the recommended budget with a lower than the 3 or 4% contingency that is ideal, and increase that at final budget. And that is what the recommended budget includes, is the 2% contingency, which is a little over $800,000, with an increase to that contingency when we adopt final budget. General fund reserves are at 5.9% of appropriations. And the one thing I did want to bring up to the board and discuss is possible adoption in the future, in the hopefully near future, of a policy that would automatically transfer a percentage of the general fund year-end fund balance or cash carry to general fund reserves. We saw this last severe recession. A lot of counties had a very healthy reserve that they could draw down to mitigate some of the impacts of the recession. Of course, like any place else when you're using one-time funds, sooner or later you're going to drain down that reserve to a level that you don't want to go any lower in. But because they had spent the time previous years building up the general fund reserve, they had that money to mitigate some of the cuts they had to make in the first couple of years of the recession. Of course, as the recession wore on, everybody was facing the same thing. We have never had a policy regarding how we increase our general fund reserves. In the entire time I think I've been in the general office, the CAO's office, we have increased the general fund reserves once. And that was just a set amount that year. And if the board was to adopt a policy, whether it's 1%, 5%, or 10% of what that cash carry or general fund balance is at the end of the year, and it automatically gets transferred into general fund reserves, we will have the opportunity to build that reserve for future years should we face another downturn. And everything, it was really interesting. When I went to CSAC, one of the things they kept talking about was that our economy is very cyclical. And usually we have a year of downturn or recession followed by 5 years of growth, followed by another downturn in growth. We are now in the 6th year of recovery. Obviously, this is nationwide and statewide. Obviously, the recession was longer and deeper than anybody expected, and we're climbing out of it. Some areas of the state faster than others. But we're in the 6th year of recovery, technically, from that recession. They're hoping those revenues will continue to grow through the 10th year before we hit a downturn. So I think it's really critical to start finding a mechanism to build those general fund reserves, and I think the Auditor Controller would agree with me.
I would agree with that. And the other reason why I'm pretty protective over teeter is because we have such low reserve and low contingency. And the reality is, just across the bridge, Tuolumne County faced that rim fire, and luckily they had some pretty healthy reserves and contingencies. Because even in Napa County, it was in the same position, but for a different reason, for the earthquakes. But both of those auditor controllers and their administrative offices and their board of supervisors were very aware of the importance of the reserves and the contingencies. Because if the worst happens, there is a possibility that there will be help, and that would be by way of FEMA. But when you're relying on that help, they're not quick to turn around and give you any money. You're looking at the potential of an 18 to 24 month time period before you're going to get any reimbursements, and you have to foot the bill first. And we would be in a horrible position if that was the case, that something happened here, because I don't really know if we would be able to sustain that very well without it operationally hitting us. And the problem is, I look at teeter as another reserve. And so that's where I'm helping to kind of send for our cash flow, because revenues don't come in when we think they're going to come in. Revenues are kind of cyclical, so we always tend to see that we have our expenditures occur first and our revenues occur second. If we have a high delinquency rate for property taxes, all of these things kind of come into play. And so I use teeter as a reserve, as a cash flow reserve, so we don't have to go externally and do short-term borrowing, which means more money out of the general fund. So I think, I'm in complete agreement with Ms. Ryan that we really need to look at our reserves overall and understand we are, we're kind of in a position of getting by, but I think we need to look at the possibility of what could happen and what would happen if something really bad happened. And I hope it never happens, but I don't want to be the one who's sitting here when it does, because it literally will impact us operationally, because we will not have the cash flow to do what we need to do. And it could be 2 years before you get that money back. And we only have short-term cash flow borrowing opportunities. That's 1 year. So if we're waiting for 2 years to get the money, we need to figure out, I guess we could do baby sales, but it wouldn't be a good thing.
And it's better to be prepared than caught with in a position you don't want to be in. So, what are the conclusions? The 15-16 recommended budget is balanced using $978,000 of one-time tier funds. Minus of that is the $250,000 annual contribution. The projected fund balance cash carry, we've called it both, is $2.4 million. We'll be hoping that it comes in at that or hopefully a little higher. We are hoping the property taxes maybe will come in a little higher than 4%. We have been successful in reducing reliance on one-time funds to balance the budget, and it will improve long-term stability if we can get totally away from the use of one-time funds. We said it was going to take multiple years. This is basically the third year. Contingencies, again, are budgeted a little bit less than we would want to see, and we will need to increase that at 3%. At this point, it would be in Teeter, we would just be moving more money from Teeter to get it to the 3% recommended, and didn't really see that was necessary. I do hope, again, that we'll see additional funding either through cash carry or increased property tax revenues at final budget. So again, to the board for the leadership, budget principles, holding the line over the last couple of years to get us where we are. My appreciation to all county departments. Budget is a really tough process. It doesn't seem to matter whether it's tough whether you have money because everybody wants a piece, or you don't have money because people have a difficult time figuring out how they can provide the same services with less. So to all the county departments for their hard work, to Rebecca, who has been such a partner in this whole process, as always, in her office, to Barbara and Deborah over in Human Resources for help going through all the positions, the job classifications, looking at everything. They're important team partners that help us put this budget together. And of course, the CAO staff, Mary Rose, Karen, and Jennifer, who's been on loan a couple of days a week on IT, that helped with budget books and everything else. We really appreciate the participation and help of everyone. So, recommendation, and conduct the public hearing, or the budget hearing. And after the conclusion of the budget hearings, hopefully we will finish them up maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday. We'll come back on the 23rd based on board direction with all the appropriate resolutions in order to adopt the budget.
All right. Any public comments?
House County Taxpayer Association. Boy, each and every day, each and every year, it gets better and better. It's a very good job. Excellent. Well, one of the concerns that taxpayers have, a good part of our budget is salaries, and we need to pay attention to that in a fundamental way. We are forced by the state and the collective bargaining laws to use the collective bargaining system to set salaries. You can't, as a board, change that. You possibly could be careful in the bargaining process that the taxpayers are well represented. Normally, the Board of Supervisors would do that because they're elected by the public, and certainly in theory they would not have a conflict of interest. But the way this is set up is that through the collective bargaining process, you're also setting your own benefits, your own retirement benefits. And there's some exceptions to that. But so that is a conflict of interest. I understand the state legal people have said that, well, it's legal, even though it might be a conflict of interest. So it makes sense that those people that are involved in negotiating on the benefit of the taxpayer would not have financial interest in the outcome of those negotiations. And there's another problem that maybe is partially resolved, and this has to do with CalPERS. When CalPERS gambles and loses in the stock market, it goes after the taxpayer because of the nature of the agreements. And there's nothing the Board of Supervisors can do to protect the public or the taxpayers against this. The only way that this could be done that I can think of is by changing to a different system. Go through the process. I understand it takes a year to get out of CalPERS. Set up a system that's fair to the employees and controlled by the employees. Controlled by employees, not the state. That the money can't be gambled by the state. And then in this way, the board would move forward not truly representing the taxpayers and the public in their negotiating with the unions. Now, as to setting the salaries of the Board of Supervisors, that's a good question. I don't think there's anything in law that says that, any way you're supposed to do that. You could have maybe every couple of years some sort of public referendum on changing salaries if it's necessary to change salaries. It's not likely you want to reduce them, but at least there could be a way to handle that that would be fair to the public. So with that exception, I'd say we got a wonderful report, and we'd recommend acceptance of the recommendations for the budget. Thank you.
Nice to see the numbers, but one thing I have not seen, maybe you folks have that. How much asset we have in real estate, the county, property they own? What is it? Has been an asset or a liability? I'm sure these ladies know better than I do, but it would be nice to know, because if the real estate's going up, the economy's going up, how about using some of that money to stabilize this county financial, give some security? You do own substantial amount of land, and it would be nice to see a report. I mean, I'm not just want to pick on you as a Board of Supervisors, because the water district's going to have reports also, but you're not in a real estate business. It's nice to be generous, but maybe you own some little light on it. What it's being used for? Is it an asset or liability? And what would be the best way to utilize it? And as far as what Mr. Segal mentioned, put something in the back of your head, folks. UAW was one of the largest automotive organization, union. They want 401k now for some reason. There may be something to it. Put it back of your head. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Comments from the board?
How would we get an inventory of our assets?
We work in the assessor's office to find out
Pretty easy.
properties.
The assessor? And then the other question, and I will say I've heard the same thing from all people of all different views, is how the supervisors get paid. And it is an uncommon practice in the business world when the people who are negotiating also receive the same sort of a pay approach. And how difficult would it be to remove the supervisors and put them in another established pay period, like or pay approach, like I believe Amador County, they never discuss what a supervisor gets paid anymore. They get a certain percentage of the Superior Court judge. And other counties are like that, and it doesn't become an issue anymore. And then when you go and you discuss, or you're part of the union negotiating, that is obviously from what we just heard on our horizon, we're not a part of that pay schedule.
There's nothing in county code that requires the board to follow what is negotiated by the unions. It has been past practice of prior boards that all non-represented units, including appointed elected in the Board of Supervisors, have followed whatever was negotiated by the unions. Again, it certainly can be looked at what other counties do and what methodology they use to set the board's salary, and bring that back to the board for discussion at a future date.
And currently, the Board of Supervisors' salary is based on a percentage of the assessor, auditor, controller, clerk recorder, and the treasurer tax collector, and the sheriff. It's 50% of those. Their average. That's an ordinance that the Board of Supervisors passed, which the Board of Supervisors could rescind.
Maybe we should put this on our horizon to talk about this, because it's not just one or two people who have asked me about this. It's many, and frankly, they're from all different thoughts of the process. And I really think it needs. My favorite part is when the elections begin, and somebody's going to pop out of nowhere and all work for free, and to buy a vote, and they're all work for half price, and that's just silly. I mean, this needs to be taken out of it. It shouldn't be a political agenda item, and I believe there is a way to do that so that we also aren't party to any of our negotiating.
And we can certainly bring that back to the board at a future meeting prior to the start of negotiations, with some options for the board to consider.
Thank you.
I heard you say through your presentation quite a few times that depends on cash carry or property tax revenue. And what I don't hear here is a significant impact due to industry and business in the county. It is almost zip. And as I could see, Rebecca shaking her head no. And so, I think it's something that we should consider about growing our industries and our business in our county. I've been saying this ever since I came on board here, and we seem to continue to not happen in that way. And so I think it's important that the public look at that and look at the results here. We're status quo. Just make it squeak and by. And our social issues are growing. As you can see, that our social programs are growing because of the need of it. The impact on the sheriff and public safety in general. If you go out and talk to your fire folks and your sheriff's department and firefighters and all those folks, you'll hear them talk about the difficulties that they're having, even just providing the current services that they're providing. So at some time, we're going to have to start moving forward in the county and allowing industry to move in. So, could make a difference. Who knows? So, thank you.
I'm assuming we're going to have more discussion for the departments, et cetera, right?
We are. This afternoon, there will be the formal presentations by the library, probation, and the sheriff's office. And hopefully by at the end of the meeting before we adjourn, or until tomorrow, the board will give me some indication of other departments they may want to hear from or have questions to, and we can arrange for them to be heard tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to adjourn for lunch and be back at what time, Shirley?
1:30.
1:30. Okay, thank you.